The Galactic Academy's entrance exam had broken stronger minds than Zekthor's. The Vaxian stood outside the neural assessment chamber, his forearms trembling despite his best efforts to appear calm. Through the translucent walls, he could see the previous candidate, a crystalline honor student, being carried out on a hover stretcher, her usually luminescent form dim and flickering. "Another one," whispered Mora, a Delphinian whose telepathic species was supposed to have an advantage in the mind probe. She had lasted only 47 seconds before collapsing. That makes 17 today. The mind probe was the Academy's final filter, designed by the ancient architects millennia ago. It didn't just scan thoughts, it excavated them, pulling every memory, fear, desire, and contradiction to the surface simultaneously. The experience of having one's entire consciousness laid bare, every secret exposed, every weakness magnified, was said to be worse than physical torture. Most species could endure 30 seconds. The record was held by a Titan-class warrior who lasted 2 minutes before his mind shut down in self-preservation. Those who survived became legends. Those who didn't recovered eventually. Usually, candidate Zekthor of Vaxus Prime, the Chamber's AI announced, "You may enter." Zekthor's career in the Academy, his family's honor, his people's reputation. All of it hung on the next few minutes. He stepped through the iris door, and it sealed behind him with a finality that made his primary heart skip. The chamber was deceptively simple: a chair, a helmet, and walls that seemed to absorb light. Zekthor sat, his breathing exercises failing to calm his racing pulses. The helmet descended and the world became everything. It started gently, his morning routine, his journey to the Academy, his nervousness, but then the probe dug deeper. Childhood shames erupted alongside adolescent failures. Every time he'd disappointed his clutch mother. The secret fear that he wasn't good enough, the deeper, more primal terror of dying alone in the void of space. The probe forced him to experience all of it at once, a cacophony of consciousness that made him want to scream. He lasted 19 seconds. "Next candidate," the proctor called, barely looking up from her datapad. Another day, another batch of broken hopefuls. Her species, the Archons, administered the test but were themselves immune to its effects. A convenient evolutionary advantage that had secured them positions as eternal proctors. Jake Morrison representing Earth? The human walked in and the proctor finally looked up. She'd heard of humans, the new species that had recently achieved faster than light travel, and immediately begun poking around the galaxy with alarming enthusiasm. They were strange creatures, soft-bodied, short-lived, and apparently incapable of taking anything seriously. This one wore what appeared to be a garment with faded symbols reading, "Rock and roll never dies," and carried, himself with a casualness that bordered on disrespectful. His chemical-based neural structure would make the probe's work interesting, at least. "You understand what you're about to experience?" the proctor asked, her tone suggesting she expected him to withdraw. "Yep," Jake said, dropping into the chair like he was settling in to watch entertainment. "Bring on the brain melter." The proctor initiated the sequence, already preparing the medical team. Humans with their primitive psychological defenses would likely last 10 seconds at most. The helmet descended. Jake's eyes closed. The probe activated and then nothing happened. The proctor frowned at her readings. The probe was functioning perfectly, operating at full power, excavating the human's consciousness with its usual ruthless efficiency. But Jake sat there, breathing normally, occasionally shifting in the chair as if mildly uncomfortable. 30 seconds passed. Then a minute. The proctor increased the probe's intensity, something she'd never had to do. The device began pulling memories with violent force, dragging up every painful moment, every failure, every fear. She watched the data stream on her monitor. Childhood bullying, romantic rejections, the death of someone called Grandpa Joe, financial struggles, midnight anxieties about meaning and purpose, the existential dread of cosmic insignificance. Jake yawned. 2 minutes, 3, 5. The proctor was now frantically adjusting settings, her 4 eyes wide with disbelief. The probe was working. She could see the human's memories being extracted, his entire psychological landscape being torn apart and laid bare. Any other species would be catatonic by now. Some would be dead. Jake opened one eye. "Is something supposed to be happening?" I feel kind of tingly, but that might be the chair. Impossible, the proctor whispered. She activated the emergency override, pushing the probe to 200% capacity, a level that existed only in theory, never meant to be used. Jake's brow furrowed slightly. Okay, now it's a bit uncomfortable. Like when you remember something embarrassing from high school, but like all of them at once, he paused. Is this supposed to be the hard part? The proctor stared at her readings in horror. The probe wasn't failing, the human was simply processing it. His mind was experiencing the full onslaught of forced self-awareness, every contradiction and trauma and fear simultaneously, and he was just handling it. How? She breathed. Jake shrugged, a gesture she'd learned meant casual indifference. I mean, I think about this stuff all the time anyway, like every human does. We've got these things called intrusive thoughts and 3 a.m. anxiety spirals and existential crises. We spend hours lying awake thinking about every embarrassing thing we've ever done. He smiled. Your machine is basically just normal Tuesday night for us. The proctor checked the chronometer. 8 minutes 12:20. Most species have psychological defenses, she said slowly, beginning to understand. Mental walls that protect them from confronting everything at once. When the probe breaks those walls, it's catastrophic. Yeah, humans kinda don't have those, Jake said. We're constantly aware of our own mortality, our failures, our fears. We tell jokes about them. We make art about them. We literally invented a whole field called therapy, just to help us deal with the fact that we're always thinking about this stuff. He paused. Actually, this is kind of therapeutic. Like exposure therapy, but faster. At the 40-minute mark, the proctor shut down the probe. Not because Jake was failing, because the machine was overheating. Jake stood, stretched, and looked around. So did I pass? The proctor stared at him, her mind struggling to process what she'd just witnessed. In 1,000 years of administering the test, she'd never seen anything like this. The human hadn't survived the probe despite his psychological makeup. He'd survived because of it. You, she started, then stopped. Yes, you passed, Jake grinned. Awesome. When do classes start? As he left, whistling a tune the proctor didn't recognize, she made a note in her report. Humanity approved for academy admission. Warning. Species possesses natural resistance to psychological warfare. Threat assessment. Recategorize from harmless to profoundly concerning. They appear to weaponize their own anxiety as a defense mechanism. Further study required. Outside, Zekthor and the others watched the human emerge, completely unscathed, chatting casually on his communication device about meeting someone for pizza later. How long did he last? Mora asked, her voice barely a whisper. The proctor emerged behind Jake, her expression shell-shocked. He didn't break. We had to stop the test because the equipment couldn't handle him. Zekthor looked at the strange, soft creature from Earth, and for the first time understood why the galaxy's military advisors were quietly terrified of humanity's potential. They weren't stronger or smarter or more advanced. They were just impossible to break, because they'd already spent their entire existence breaking themselves, and somehow they'd learned to laugh about it.